The sky burned crimson over New Horizon City, a sprawling metropolis of glass and steel that clung to the edge of Earth's last habitable continent. It was 2147, and humanity teetered on the brink. Decades of resource wars, climate collapse, and fractured governments had left the planet a patchwork of desperation. Yet, in the heart of this chaos, a faint pulse of hope flickered, a pulse that would soon ignite a rebellion against an enemy no one saw coming. Cale Renner was nobody, a 27-year-old scavenger. He scratched out a living in the city's underbelly, sifting through the ruins of the old world for scraps to trade. His wiry frame, scarred hands, and sharp green eyes told a story of survival, but his heart carried something heavier, a stubborn refusal to give up, even when the odds screamed defeat. Cale's only family was his younger sister, Lila, a 16-year-old tech prodigy who could hack a drone with a rusty datapad and a grin. They lived in a cramped bunker beneath a collapsed maglev station, their walls lined with salvaged circuit boards and dreams of a better tomorrow. That tomorrow seemed impossible when the first void rift tore open the sky. It wasn't a ship or a storm. It was a wound in reality, a jagged scar of black and violet that pulsed with malevolent energy. From it poured the Void Lords, entities of shadow and malice that defied comprehension. They weren't flesh or machine, but something worse, an intelligence that consumed light, hope, and matter itself. Their arrival was silent, but their impact was cataclysmic. Entire cities vanished into ash, their populations erased in seconds. The news feeds called it the Reaping, but Cale called it hell. The world's militaries already weakened, threw everything at the Void Lords, nukes, railguns, EMPs. Nothing worked. The invaders didn't fight like an army. They dissolved resistance like acid through paper. Within weeks, humanity's global population plummeted from 3 billion to under 500 million. The survivors huddled in fortified enclaves, praying for a miracle. Cale and Lila weren't praying. They were running. "Move, Lila," Cale shouted, dragging his sister through the rubble of a shattered marketplace. Above a Void Lord, a towering mass of shifting darkness with tendrils like living smoke, loomed over the city. Its presence sucked the air dry, leaving a suffocating weight on their chests. Lila clutched her datapad, her fingers flying across the screen as she tried to hack into a nearby security turret. "Got it," she yelled. The turret whirred to life, spraying plasma bolts at the Void Lord. The shots vanished into its form like pebbles into a lake. The creature didn't flinch, but it turned, its eyeless gaze locking onto them. Cale's stomach dropped. "Run," he roared, shoving Lila toward an alley. They dove into a maintenance tunnel, just as the Void Lord unleashed a pulse of energy. The ground shook, and the marketplace collapsed into a crater of glowing ash. Cale shielded Lila, his heart pounding. "We can't keep doing this," he gasped. "We need a plan." Lila's eyes gleamed with defiance. "I've got one. I've been tracking signals, something the Void Lords are hiding. There's a pattern in their rifts, Cale. They're not random. I think they're protecting something." Cale stared at her. "You're saying we can hit them back?" "I'm saying we can find them," Lila said, tapping her datapad. "There's a signal hub in the old orbital command ruins, 50 miles north. If I can get there, I can crack their network. Maybe figure out what they want." Cale wanted to argue. 50 miles through a war zone was suicide, but the fire in Lila's eyes was contagious. He nodded. "Then we go. Together." Their journey was a gauntlet of danger. They dodged Void Lord patrols, scavenged food from abandoned camps, and fought off raiders desperate for their supplies. Along the way, they met others, survivors, with their own stories of loss and defiance. There was Mara, a grizzled ex-pilot with a cybernetic arm and a knack for hot-wiring vehicles. Jiro, a soft-spoken scientist who'd lost his family but not his curiosity. And Zara, a sharpshooter with a vendetta against the Void Lords for destroying her village. Together, they formed a ragtag crew, bound by necessity and a shared refusal to die quietly. The orbital command ruins were a fortress of twisted metal and flickering holograms, half buried in sand. Lila led the group inside, her datapad guiding them through labyrinthine corridors. The air hummed with an unnatural chill, and Kale's skin prickled. "This place feels wrong," he muttered. "It's their tech," Jiro whispered, adjusting his glasses. "The Void Lords don't just destroy, they rewrite reality. This hub might be a node for their control." Lila knelt by a glowing console, her fingers dancing over alien symbols that pulsed on the screen. "This is it," she said. "Their network. It's like a map. They're opening rifts to pull something into our world. Something big." Before she could say more, the walls shuddered. A Void Lord materialized, its form coalescing from the shadows. Mara cursed, Jiro froze, and Zara raised a rifle, but Kale stepped forward, clutching a makeshift EMP grenade he'd cobbled together from scavenged parts. "Lila, keep working," he shouted, hurling the grenade. The explosion disrupted the Void Lord's form, scattering it into wisps of smoke. But it reformed, faster than Kale expected, and lashed out with a tendril. Zara tackled him out of the way, and the tendril obliterated a wall instead. "We can't fight this thing," Mara yelled, firing her plasma pistol to no effect. Lila's voice cut through the chaos. "I'm in. I've got their signal." Her datapad glowed, projecting a holographic map of Earth marked with rift locations. At the center was a massive anomaly in the Arctic, a rift larger than any other. "That's their heart," Lila said. "If we hit it, we might stop them." The Void Lord lunged, but Kale grabbed a power conduit from the wall and jammed it into the console, sending a surge of electricity through the room. The creature shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, and dissolved. The console sparked and died, but Lila had what she needed. "We've got a target," Kale said, helping Lila to her feet. "The Arctic. That's where we end this." The group stumbled out of the ruins, battered but alive. The holographic map burned in Kale's mind, a chance, however slim, to fight back. Humanity was the underdog, outgunned and outmatched, but Kale felt a spark ignite in his chest. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were rebels. The Arctic was a frozen graveyard, a wasteland of ice and wind where the sun barely rose. Kale's crew trekked through blizzards, their stolen hovercraft rattling under the strain of sub-zero temperatures. The Void Lord's presence grew stronger the closer they got to the Arctic Rift. The sky churned with violet storms, and the ground trembled with unnatural quakes. Every step felt like a defiance of fate. Kale led the group, his breath fogging in the frigid air. Lila huddled over her datapad, refining the rift data. "The signal's getting clearer," she said, her voice muffled by her scarf. "The Void Lords are building something, a gateway. If it opens fully, it'll bring their whole dimension into ours." Jiro, bundled in a thermal suit, frowned. "A dimension? You're saying they're not just aliens, they're something else." "Something older," Lila said. "Their tech isn't tech. It's rules. Like they're rewriting the laws of physics." Mara snorted, checking the hovercraft's fuel cells. "Great. So we're fighting gods now." "Not gods," Zara said, her rifle slung across her back. "Monsters. And monsters bleed." Kale admired Zara's fire, but he felt the weight of their mission. They were 5 people against an existential threat. The odds were laughable, but he'd learned long ago that odds didn't matter when you had nothing left to lose. Their journey wasn't just about survival. It was about rallying others. Along the way, they broadcast Lila's findings on encrypted channels, spreading word of the Arctic Rift to every enclave and resistance cell they could reach. The message was simple. Humanity can fight back. Join us. The response was slow at first, but it grew. Survivors emerged from hiding. Pilots, engineers, hackers, soldiers. By the time they reached the Arctic's edge, their crew had swelled to a small army of 200, each person carrying their own scars and stories. The Arctic Rift loomed like a tear in the world, a kilometer-wide vortex of black and violet that pulsed with energy. Void Lords patrolled its perimeter, their forms flickering in and out of existence. Kale's army set up camp in a network of ice caves, planning their assault. Lila and Jiro worked tirelessly, using scavenged tech to build a disruptor, a device to destabilize the rift. "If we can overload it," Jiro explained, "we might collapse their gateway." "Might." Mara raised an eyebrow. It's theoretical, Jiro admitted. But it's our best shot. Kale gathered the group for a final briefing. We're not soldiers, he said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. We're scavengers, scientists, survivors. But we're here because we're human, and humans don't quit. The Void Lords think we're weak. Let's show them what weak looks like. The crowd roared, their voices echoing off the ice. Kale caught Lila's eye, and she gave him a nod. For the first time, he felt like they might actually pull this off. The assault began at dawn. The resistance split into 3 teams. Zara led a sniper unit to draw the Void Lord's attention. Mara piloted a squadron of drones to disrupt their movements. And Kale and Lila spearheaded the charge to plant the disruptor at the rift's core. The battle was chaos. Void Lords swept through the ice, their tendrils carving through steel and flesh alike. Zara snipers held their ground, their plasma rounds buying precious seconds. Mara's drones buzzed like angry hornets, overloading the Void Lord's forms with EMP bursts. Kale and Lila reached the rift's edge, the disruptor, a cobbled-together mess of wires and alien tech, strapped to Kale's back. The air around the rift felt alive, pressing against them like a living thing. This is it, Lila said, her voice trembling but resolute. She plugged her datapad into the disruptor, uploading the final code. A Void Lord materialized, its form dwarfing them. Kale fired his plasma rifle, knowing it was useless, but refusing to stand still. The creature lunged, and Lila screamed, diving to shield the disruptor. Kale tackled her out of the way, taking the brunt of the tendril strike. Pain seared through his side, but he gritted his teeth and stood. Finish it, he yelled. Lila's fingers flew across the datapad. The disruptor hummed, its core glowing white-hot. The Void Lord shrieked, its form destabilizing as the rift flickered. It's working, Lila shouted. But the victory was short-lived. More Void Lords converged, their combined presence warping the ice into jagged spikes. Kale's army fought valiantly, but they were losing ground. In the chaos, a new signal burst through Lila's datapad. It wasn't Void Lord tech, it was human. A fleet of resistance ships, cobbled together from every corner of the globe, roared over the horizon. The broadcasts had worked. Humanity was rising. The ships unleashed a barrage of missiles, buying Kale and Lila time. The disruptor reached critical mass, and Lila hit the final command. The rift pulsed violently, then collapsed inward, dragging the Void Lords with it. The explosion shook the Arctic, sending cracks through the ice. Kale grabbed Lila, shielding her as the ground buckled. When the dust settled, the rift was gone. So were most of the Void Lords. The survivors cheered, their voices a defiant roar against the silence. Kale looked at Lila, bruised but alive. We did it, he whispered. But Lila's face was grim. Not yet, she said, pointing to her datapad. A faint signal pulsed from deep space. That wasn't their heart. It was just a gate. The real fight's coming. The victory in the Arctic was a spark that lit the world ablaze. News of the rift's collapse spread like wildfire, carried by resistance broadcasts and whispered in every surviving enclave. Humanity, battered and broken, found its voice again. Cities rose from the ashes, their people armed with scavenged tech and a newfound belief. The Void Lords could be fought. Kale's crew became legends, echoes of the Underdog, they called them. But legends don't rest, and the war was far from over. Lila's datapad had traced the Void Lord signal to a point beyond the solar system, a nexus in deep space where their true power lay. The Resistance had no ships capable of reaching it, no weapons strong enough to challenge an interdimensional enemy. But giving up wasn't an option. Kale, Lila, Mara, Jiro, and Zara rallied their forces, now 1,000 strong, and set to work building a fleet. Scavengers became engineers, survivors became soldiers, and the ruins of Earth became a forge for humanity's last stand. The plan was audacious: construct a single massive ship, the Defiant, using salvaged Void Lord tech and human ingenuity. Jiro and Lila led the engineering effort, reverse engineering rift technology to create a faster-than-light drive. Mara trained pilots, Zara organized strike teams, and Kale became the reluctant leader, his voice carrying the weight of hope. "We're not just fighting for survival," he told the crowds. "We're fighting for every soul we've lost, every home we've rebuilt. We're fighting to be free." 6 months later, the Defiant stood ready, a sleek, patchwork behemoth bristling with weapons and powered by a rift drive. Its crew was a mix of humanity's best and boldest, each person knowing the odds of returning were slim. Kale stood on the bridge, Lila at his side, as the ship launched into the void. The stars blurred as the rift drive engaged, hurling them toward the Nexus. The Void Lord's home was a nightmare, a vast, shifting structure of black crystal and liquid shadow, orbiting a dying star. It wasn't a planet or a station, but a living entity, pulsing with the same energy as the rifts. Void Lords swarmed it, their forms merging and splitting in a grotesque dance. Lila's scans revealed a central core, a heart that powered their dimension. "Destroy that," she said, "and we end them for good." The Defiant dove into battle, its weapons blazing. Void Lords tore at the hull, their tendrils piercing shields. Mara's pilots fought like demons, weaving through the swarm. Zara's strike teams boarded the structure, planting explosives at key points. Kale and Lila led a small team to the core, navigating a labyrinth of shifting walls and predatory shadows. Inside, the heart was a blinding orb of energy, surrounded by Void Lords that seemed to guard it like a hive. Kale's team fought with everything they had: plasma rifles, EMP grenades, even makeshift blades. Lila plugged into the core's network, her datapad struggling to interface with its alien code. "It's fighting me," she gasped. "It's alive." Kale stood guard, his rifle smoking. A Void Lord lunged, and he took the hit, his armor cracking. "Keep going," he shouted. Blood dripped from his side, but he held his ground, firing until the creature dissolved. Outside, the Defiant was taking a beating. Mara's voice crackled over the comms. "We're losing shields. You've got minutes, Kale." The ship's rift drive was overheating, threatening to tear itself apart. Zara's teams were pinned down, their explosives barely denting the structure. Lila's fingers trembled as she broke through the core's defenses. "I'm in," she shouted. The orb pulsed wildly, its energy destabilizing. "If I overload it, this whole place goes down. But we won't make it out." Kale grabbed her shoulder. "We knew the cost. Do it." Lila hesitated, tears in her eyes. "I'm not losing you, Kale." "You're not," he said, smiling despite the pain. "You're saving everyone else." She nodded, hitting the final command. The core screamed, its energy spiraling out of control. The structure began to collapse, Void Lords dissolving into ash. Kale's team fought their way back to the Defiant, but the ship was crumbling. Mara pulled a desperate maneuver, slingshotting around the dying star to buy time. As the Defiant limped through the rift drive, the Nexus exploded, a supernova of light and shadow that erased the Void Lord's presence. The ship emerged in Earth's orbit, battered but intact. Cheers erupted across the globe as the news spread. The Void Lords were gone. Kale collapsed on the bridge, Lila at his side. They'd lost half their crew, including Zara, whose sacrifice had detonated the final explosives. But humanity was free. The skies cleared, and the world began to rebuild, its people united by the echoes of their underdog fight. Years later, Kale and Lila stood on a hill overlooking New Horizon City, now a beacon of renewal. Statues of the Resistance heroes, Mara, Jiro, Zara, and countless others, lined the streets. "Think it's really over?" Lila asked. Kale looked to the stars, a faint unease lingering. "For now," he said. "But if anything comes for us again, we'll be ready." The story of the echoes of the Underdog spread, not just on Earth, but to the stars, a testament to humanity's unbreakable spirit. It was a story of loss, sacrifice, and triumph, a story that would inspire generations, a spark that would never fade.